Imagine waking up one morning as an ordinary woman. You feed the chickens, you sweep the floor, you try to make yesterday's bread last one more day. By sunset, your neighbors think you work for Satan. Not because anybody saw you flying on a broom. That would at least be interesting. No, the evidence could be much worse. Somebody's cow got sick, a baby died, the harvest failed. Butter refused to become butter, and somehow all of that was apparently your fault. For roughly 300 years, Europe became obsessed with finding witches, and the people accused were usually not mysterious old crones with bubbling potions. They were widows, midwives, poor women, unmarried women, women who argued, women who knew too much about herbs. Women nobody important wanted to defend. Basically, if life was already difficult, witch trials could make it catastrophically worse. It is 1628. You live in a small village in Germany. This is an incredibly bad year to be alive, which is saying something for 1628. Europe is in the middle of the 30 Years' War. Soldiers wander through the countryside taking food, animals, and whatever else is not nailed down. Taxes take money. Disease takes whoever is still standing. Then the weather gets strange. Summers are cold, winters are brutal, rain destroys crops. Families begin living one bad harvest away from starvation. Historians call part of this period the Little Ice Age, but the people living through it do not have climate science. They have fear, hunger, church sermons, and extremely confident rumors. Your husband died 2 winters ago. That already makes life dangerous. A married woman has a man attached to her household property and reputation. A widow has to survive on her own. You sell eggs. You help women through childbirth. You know which plants can calm a fever, ease a cough, or stop a wound from getting worse. In a sensible world, that would make you useful. In your world, it makes you slightly suspicious. Then you have an argument with your neighbor, Klaus. Klaus owes you money. Not much money, but enough that you keep reminding him, repeatedly, loudly. Klaus does not enjoy this. A week later, Klaus's cow becomes sick. Now, a normal person might think, perhaps my cow ate something bad. Klaus lives in 1628, so he chooses the far more reasonable explanation. You curse the cow because of the money. One accusation on its own might not destroy you, but accusations breed. Someone remembers you muttering near a field last spring. Someone else says you own a black cat. Suspicious. You know herbs. Also suspicious. Apparently, soup knowledge was a direct route to Satan. Another neighbor remembers that you once refused to lend him salt. Shortly after that, his daughter developed a rash. Coincidence? Obviously not. A man says his beer went sour after you looked at him strangely. Suddenly, a village full of frightened people has created a story. You are dangerous. You are poor. You are alone. You are disliked. And you do not have a rich uncle, powerful husband, or local nobleman ready to say, maybe we should not execute her because a cow sneezed. Then one morning, men arrive at your store. They do not say, good morning, we are here to investigate a misunderstanding. They say, you have been accused of witchcraft. At that moment, you are already in serious danger because many witch trials were not designed to discover the truth. They were designed to produce a confession. If you deny being a witch, the court may decide you are lying. If you cry too much, that looks guilty. If you stay calm, that can also look guilty. If you become angry at being accused of serving the devil, that is suspicious. If you seem frightened, well, what do you have to be frightened of? This is less of a trial and more of a very evil personality quiz where every answer leads to the same result. The officials search your house. They look for strange powders, books, dolls, animals, or anything that can be made to look sinister. A jar of dried herbs becomes witch medicine. A bent pin becomes a curse tool. A black cat becomes an employee of hell. Then they search you for a witch's mark, a mole, a scar, a birthmark. Anything slightly unusual can be called proof that the devil marked you as his servant. This is very convenient for the investigators because almost every human being has a scar, mole, freckle, or some other weird little thing on their body. Congratulations, you have skin That is now evidence. The court may even bring in women to inspect you closely, because apparently the path to justice requires turning every harmless freckle into a national emergency. Then comes the questioning. Hours of it, sometimes days. Who taught you magic? When did you meet the devil? What did he look like? Who else in the village attends the secret meetings? Notice something strange about these questions. Nobody asks whether you met the devil. They ask when. Nobody asks whether you cursed the cow. They ask why. The answer has already been decided. You are expected to fit your life into the story the court wants to hear, and the court already has a detailed story. Judges, clergy, and writers had spread terrifying ideas about secret witch meetings, devil worship, animal familiars, flying through the night, and plots against Christian society. One famous book, the Malleus Maleficarum, helped to spread some of the nastiest witch hunting ideas. It was not followed everywhere, but it helped turn fear into something that looked official. In some places, courts used torture to force confessions. Not everywhere. Not every trial, but often enough that it became one of the darkest parts of the entire story. Under enough pain, exhaustion, terror, and isolation, people will say almost anything to make it stop. They confess to flying, to curses, to turning into animals, to causing storms, to meeting impossible creatures in the forest. Not because these things happened, but because the court had taught them the answers. You might begin by saying you are innocent. Then you might say you only met the devil once. Then you might say you cannot remember. Then, eventually, you may tell the court exactly what it wants to hear. A confession is produced. The officials feel clever. The village feels safer. And you have just signed your own death sentence. But the nightmare gets worse. You are told to name other witches. This is how fear becomes a machine. Every name you give may buy you a little relief today, but it puts another person in danger tomorrow. Maybe you name the woman who accused you first. Maybe you name someone who once insulted you. Maybe you name someone because the interrogator keeps suggesting the name until you agree. Once that person is arrested, she is asked the same question. Who else was there? Who else served the devil? More names, more arrests, more terror. In some towns, one trial grows into dozens. A woman accuses her neighbor. The neighbor accuses another woman. That woman accuses her daughter, her sister, or the midwife who helped deliver her child. Panic does not spread because magic is real. It spreads because people are scared. Authorities believe they are fighting evil, and the system rewards accusations with more accusations. Not every part of Europe hunts witches in the same way. Some places have fewer trials. Some judges are skeptical. Some courts demand actual evidence, which is a pretty useful idea. Other regions become absolute death traps. Parts of the German states and Switzerland see especially intense witch hunts. England usually hangs convicted witches. In many parts of continental Europe, executions are by burning. And no, Salem did not burn its witches. That is a movie version of history. 19 people were hanged during the Salem witch trials, while others died in prison. The real history is horrifying enough. It does not need extra fake horror. Across Europe, tens of thousands of people are executed for witchcraft. Most are women, though men and children can be accused too. Entire families can be pulled into the panic. Your final trial is fast. The verdict was probably decided long before you entered the room. Your neighbors watch from the crowd. Some are frightened, some are convinced, some are relieved that the accusation landed on somebody else. This is not always a story about cartoon villains with pointy horns. Ordinary people help make it possible. People who are hungry, people who have lost children, people who are angry at a neighbor, people who want an explanation for a world that seems completely broken. When crops fail, blaming a witch makes chaos feel organized. When disease strikes, blaming a witch makes grief feel like justice. It is a terrible answer, but it is an answer. Eventually, witch trials begin to fade. Judges become more skeptical. Governments demand stronger evidence. People begin asking uncomfortable questions like, can someone really create a storm by whispering at a goat? Doubt returns. But by then, countless people have already been destroyed by rumors, forced confessions, bad laws, and terrified communities. You never had spells. You never had a devil. You never attended secret midnight meetings in the forest. You had bad luck, a poor reputation, a sick cow next door, and neighbors who desperately needed somebody to blame. That was enough to turn an ordinary life into a death sentence. So, why did it suck to be a witch trial victim? Because once fear decided you were guilty, innocence stopped mattering. And the scariest thing in the whole story was never the witch. It was the people standing around her, absolutely sure they were the good guys,